Hello, wonderful boys and girls, and welcome to Learning with Avant-garde Books. I'm Sheree Hardy, and I hope that you are well. Thank you for listening and watching. Today's lesson is going to be on the life and legacy of Nelson Mandela. What I would like for you to do is get in a very comfortable place, get relaxed, and let's learn about the life and legacy of Nelson Mandela. Like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It is man-made, and it can be overcome and eradicated by the actions of human beings. Nelson Mandela. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was born in the Xhosa Royal Thembu family on July 18, 1918. His father, Henry Mfakanyiswa, was a counselor to tribal leaders. At the time of Mandela's birth, South Africa had a legal system of racism, segregation, and discrimination against blacks called apartheid. The white minority population maintained this system of discrimination by creating unjust and harsh social, economic, and political disadvantages for the 97% black population of South Africans. Interesting fact, Nelson Mandela's father named him Rolihlahla. The name literally means pulling a branch off a tree in Xhosa, but the English equivalent would likely be troublemaker. He was later named Nelson by a teacher. Nelson Mandela studied law at the University of Witwatersrand. He later became a leader who resisted apartheid's racist policies. In 1944, he joined the African National Congress, ANC. When the ANC was banned in South Africa by the government, anyone participating in protests and demonstrations could be arrested and sent to prison. From 1956 to 1961, Mandela was on trial for treason, the crime of attempting to overthrow the government of one's country or of attempting to kill or injure the ruler or the ruler's family. However, in 1961, Mandela was acquitted. I cherish my own freedom dearly, but I care even more for your freedom. Nelson Mandela. In the early 1960s, black South Africans began to publicly march, strike, and protest apartheid. Sadly, the police would respond to their demonstrations with violence. On March 21, 1960, in Sharpeville, police shot and killed 69 people. Hundreds more were injured by police brutality. In the end, hundreds of South Africans were killed during apartheid protests over the span of several years. After the Sharpeville massacre, Mandela encouraged the ANC to start a military wing called Umkhonto we Sizwe. For Mandela at that time, nonviolence did not seem to be working. He thought the only way to solve the issue was by using the same weapons as the government. However, for his actions, along with 7 other men, Mandela was sent to prison. He remained incarcerated from 1964 to 1982 at Robben Island Prison of Cape Town. Later, he was confined to Pollsmoor Prison, which is closer to South Africa's mainland. While in prison, Mandela was often beaten and abused. He was also forced to do hard labor. sleep on hard floors. He was fed very little food. Nelson Mandela was not allowed to attend the funerals of his mother and son, who both died while he was in prison. However, the longer Mandela served in prison, the more his popularity and power grew. He was offered freedom if he changed his political position, but he refused to compromise his beliefs. He wanted democracy for all South Africans. He wanted the European colonists to relinquish their power and let the descendants of native South Africans rule the land that rightfully belonged to them. Prison walls could not stop people from hearing and remembering Mandela's powerful words. He became the most important Black South African leader even while incarcerated. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Nelson Mandela. After Mandela's release from prison on February 11, 1990, he continued to work with the ANC to ensure freedom and equality in his beloved South Africa. He was elected as the organization's president the next year. Picture is Mandela with his second wife, Winnie Mandela. She was married to Nelson from 1958 to 1996. In 1993, Nelson Mandela and then South African President Frederick Willem de Klerk were honored with the Nobel Peace Prize for their work to end apartheid and establish stability in South Africa. On May 10, 1994, Nelson Mandela became a historical icon. He was inaugurated as the first Black South African president. He was 75 years old when he took office. His term ended on June 14, 1999. When Mandela took office, South Africa was divided, and the country was on the brink of total collapse because of violence. Mandela wanted to save his nation and bring people together. He did this through one of the country's favorite sports, rugby. The once despised Springboks, South Africa's national rugby team, became a central focus of hope for a torn and bitter nation. Once Mandela rallied behind the team, millions of citizens did too. Astoundingly, the Springboks won the 1995 Rugby World Cup, which brought pride to South Africans of all races and hues. During his lifetime, Mandela received over 200 prestigious awards and honors. Here are just a few, boys and girls. I'll let this slide. Stay up for a minute, look over these awards. Pictured is Mandela with South African President Frederick Willem de Klerk in 1993 receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. During Nelson Mandela's tenure as president, he encouraged South Africans to seek forgiveness and reconciliation for the hatred that had ravished their country. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which invited people who experienced violence or discrimination during apartheid to share their stories. The organization also encouraged perpetrators of violence to confess their actions and apply for amnesty in lieu of prison time. Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was awarded over 50 honorary degrees from universities around the world. Here is list one of two of just some of those degrees. Education is the great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine, that a child of farm workers can become the president of a great nation. Boys and girls, here is list two of some of those honorary degrees that Nelson Mandela received during his lifetime. Here are some interesting facts about Nelson Mandela. He opened the first black law firm in South Africa in 1952. While in prison, Mandela read the poem Invictus, which means unconquerable, by the English poet William Ernest Henley. Mandela credited this poem as one of the things that helped him remain mentally strong. This was the inspiration for the Clint Eastwood movie with the title of the poem, starring Morgan Freeman as Mandela and Matt Damon as the captain of South Africa's rugby team. Scientists have named a prehistoric woodpecker after him, Mandela. It's called Australopithecus Nelson Mandela. Wow. In 1993, the Physics Institute at Leeds University named a nuclear particle the Mandela particle. Nelson Mandela's autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, was published in 1995. Nelson Mandela was married 3 times. He had 7 children. Nelson Mandela died on December 5, 2013, when he was 95 years old. He once said, "Don't judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again." Boys and girls, thank you for watching this educational video on Nelson Mandela. Don't forget that your learning potential is limitless. Learn, inspire, and share. Nelson Mandela once said, "No country can really develop unless its citizens are educated." Boys and girls, have a beautiful day and continue learning and growing.